Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Leah Swanberg, and I'm the founder of Canadian Fertility Consultants and Egg Helpers. A couple housekeeping things. If you have to jump off, we will be sending everyone the recording of this webinar. As well, if you look to your right, there is a comment section for you to ask any questions that you may have. And I hope that I can answer them for you or send you in the direction of someone that can. So as we talk about, um, finding money to build your family, I really want to start back at the beginning for many of you. I know that we have registrations from really all over the world. And so while some of my information applies to a Canadian experience or journey, I will also be sharing ways in which you can, as intended parents outside of Canada, utilize funds, find funds. Look in the couch cushions of your life to afford a surrogacy journey. The questions I get the most are, how do people afford this? The question I ask of intended parents under the age of 45 is, have you won the lottery? For so many people that come to surrogacy and egg donation, they are doing so after years of fertility treatments for themselves, years of adoption, maybe stops and starts, as well as, other ways in which they looked at expanding their family, whether it's through fostering or other social sort of scenarios to have kids in their lives. When looking at a surrogacy journey, we know that there are a couple of key components. So we know that you will need a lawyer. We know that you will need a fertility clinic. We know that you will need the surrogate. And for many people, we know that you will need an egg donor. And so when we look at all of those pieces together, or some of those pieces, for some of you, you may already have embryos created. And if you created them in the year of 2025 and you're still doing your taxes, this information may be applicable for those of you in that scenario. So when I talk to intended parents and I'm getting to know them and I'm learning about their um, where they live in the world, what they do for work, are they self-employed, do they have access to any benefits through their employer. I'm really starting to chip away or dig for gold. I'm looking for money on their behalf. And so for many intended parents, you would say, well, I live in Ontario and I've been at fertility treatments for a long time and I am now at this point. And so immediately, and this goes for whether you live in Ontario or France, I'm going to ask you where you work. And then we're going to talk about your employer. Where do you work? Do you love your job? And if the answer is, I work at Xerox and I love my job, or I work at McDonald's and I love my job, Starbucks, love my job, the question is always going to be the same. Do you understand your health, your employee health benefits? And 9 times out of 10, people say, well, I don't think I have anything. And I, probe a bit deeper and I say, well, do you have drug coverage? Are prescriptions covered? And they go, well, I don't really know. And I don't know what would be covered. Okay. So we want to look at your drug coverage. If you have a surrogate or an egg donor in Canada, the receipt for medication, because the medication is for your benefit, even though going into someone else's body, the receipt for that medication from your clinic will come in your name. So you will have a receipt. If you have an egg donor and a surrogate, typically in the range of $12,000 to cover your surrogate and your egg donor's medication. It may be 10, it may be 9, but I always kind of want to add 25% to anything to ensure that you aren't unpleasantly surprised when the bill arrives. So that's the first place, is to look at your employee benefits and if there's a drug plan. Then we want to look at a couple of other pieces. And whether you live in Canada or not, if you are accessing medical services, unless your drug plan or your employee benefits say services only in the country of residence, then you are able to use receipts from places outside of where you live, especially if this is not available to you where you live. France, for example, egg donation for a same-sex male couple is not possible. And so really, really sort of, getting into the fine print there. And so is diagnostic testing covered? Diagnostic testing would be your sperm DNA fragmentation if you're a male. It would be ultrasounds if you are a female using your own eggs. Looking in that benefits package for diagnostic testing. Also, there may be alternative family building money. There may be adoption money. There may be IVF money. There may be fertility clinic money. So really getting clear on what could potentially be covered, and call Manulife, call Sun Life, call Blue Cross. Hey, I've read this in my plan. I'd like to learn more about it. Many companies are adding additional offerings through programs like Carrot, Sprout Fertility, Progeny. They're all additional plans that cover fertility, and many employers are starting to provide them as an additional offering. And so really talking to your employer, hey, do you guys offer anything like this? I think it'd be really great. If you work with a company that has a great HR department, if you work somewhere that has a diversity, equity, and inclusion program, if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, really starting to talk about this and that you are wanting to build your family this way. Additionally, if your employer offers a self-funded HSA or health spending account, if you can allocate a certain number of dollars to that, I would suggest using that as well, because an HSA or health spending account is pre-tax dollars. So often people will use their HSA for fertility clinic treatment unless you have it already there. So you want to add up all of the things you have, then all of the things you could have. So if you have an HSA, but you have fertility coverage, we want to see how we can use that HSA to build your family. So the HSA might be used for the genetic testing of your embryos, if genetic testing of embryos isn't included in clinical testing on a line item. And so, as you can see, we're just sort of building and building and building based on what your employer offers. Now, if your employer doesn't offer anything, there's a few ways to go beside your employer, as I say, or if you are self-employed, look at an independent standalone HSA or health spending account. Talk to your accountant about how to best, from a financial tax perspective, go about this. It's amazing to have a child through surrogacy. And if diapers are going to be a problem because you've spent so much here that you maybe didn't have to, I really want to encourage you to get curious with your employee benefits, get curious with your accountant about how you can, if you do pay for medical expenses, how you can write them off in a way that gets you the most money. We also have been learning this year that many countries, and including many provinces in Canada, I'll use Ontario as an example again. If you're in Ontario, there is IVF funding available, one round of funding, and there's some qualifiers there. And Aaliyah will put in the chat a link to the Ontario government website for IVF funding, if you could, Aaliyah, just as an example for people. Um, there's there's this IVF cycle funding, and it equates to, I think, $13,000. And then through the Ontario government, there's a tax rebate. So if you put in your um, IVF expenses, you can get up to $5,000 tax credit there as well. And so when we look at, you know, um, employee benefit, IVF funding, government tax credit, there's absolutely money there to find. And many provinces across Canada now are either allocating tax credits, or there are IVF cycles available to those who are, um, you know, wanting to build their families, whether through surrogacy, egg donation, or their own IVF. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in the chat. I would be happy to answer them. Okay, I will move on. So as you're looking at ways in which to fund your journey, I often suggest to intended parents to start a spreadsheet early on, and not just look at, oh, how long is the waiting time? Um, Reese 4021, could you clarify if you mean waiting time to get in for IVF or waiting time for a surrogate or donor? I would love to answer your question. Okay, so IVF funding. So where are you in Canada or the world? That will make more sense. And I'll answer about Ontario while I'm waiting, because I also got a message to our Instagram about Ontario funding. There is a lot of funding. Oh, perfect. So if you are in Ontario and looking at funding and fall under the criteria of under 43, haven't used funding before, have a fertility issue, there are clinics that have available spots for funding. If you'd like to get more information about that, please email me. I'm happy to refer you to a clinic that we know has spots. But there really isn't a wait time in Ontario right now. Spots are open and available, and we are seeing clients referred directly into clinic programs. You will need a referral from your family doctor. And so what we typically do is we will refer a client while they are getting their referral from their doctor in place. And so we get you in the side door, and then the doctor referral comes in, and then that's what is necessary for the IVF funding. First, if you were planning to choose our own embryo. Oh, great question. I think it really just depends on, if you already have embryos created, then you don't have a clinical cost. But again, when we look at all the costs associated, we look at an agency fee, unless you're finding a surrogate on your own, which we love when people are able to do that. We're looking at the lawyer's fees. We're looking at the surrogate's reimbursements. We're looking at post-birth legal costs. We're looking if you're traveling outside of your community to meet your baby and travel home. So there's really a lot of variables, and I would love to connect with you to talk to you about that as well. So please feel free to email me. So, as you're beginning to go through this process, and as you're looking for ways to afford it, really, we suggest, creating a spreadsheet, starting to really look at what is due now, what is due in the future, in the near future, what is due in the distant future. And for some people, they're able to, if you have a lifetime benefit at work, that's one thing. But if you have a yearly benefit, really looking at what you could pay for this year and what you could pay for next year in order to maximize 2 years of costs. We often have people ask us, well, I'm creating my spreadsheet and I have a fertility clinic and they've suggested I do a guaranteed program, but I just don't know if that is a good financial decision. And guaranteed programs, I always say, are a casino. And so if the clinic gets your surrogate pregnant first attempt, they make money. And that's great news because it means you have a baby on the way. If a fertility clinic doesn't get you pregnant first time, second time, third time, and you run out of embryos, yes, the fertility clinic will do another round of IVF, but you may need to get another egg donor or surrogate. And so a guarantee really is only on the medical side of things. And so I think really challenging your clinic as to why they're suggesting that is a really important question and a really great idea. So you have a spreadsheet, you're looking at, how to cut costs, how to save money, where to find money. So we've talked about our employer benefits. We've talked about provincial funding if we're in Canada. Now, if you are outside of Canada, and I've just been blown away in the last couple of months talking to intended parents. I talked to a set of intended parents from Ireland, and their journey was covered by, or their IVF costs were covered by the Irish government. Well, I shouldn't say. They submitted the receipt and they got a large tax credit, even though their IVF was in Canada. It didn't matter. And so really, looking at your employer benefits if you're outside of Canada, and then looking at what your government offers in terms of family building. We have seen with so many countries with declining birth rates, we've seen more money coming forward from the federal government, in Canada, provincial government, and governments around the world really saying, hey, we want to encourage you to have children because we are not replacing ourselves. And so, definitely check that out. Now, if you are an intended parent who is going to be traveling for your journey, if you live outside of Canada or you live somewhere where you're going to have to be flying to get to your surrogate or to get to the fertility clinic, this is my suggestion. Switch to a points credit card and start using it. Start using it for everything. Use it at the fertility clinic if you can. Use it for your surrogates travel if you can, so that your travel when you come to Canada for your baby, or when you travel outside of your province to collect your baby and be with your surrogate for the birth, you have a bunch of points to burn, because the travel piece really sneaks up on people, because it's often a flexible ticket that's needed. It's often a last minute ticket that's needed. And so having those points available can be super helpful. For many people, they are looking at refinancing their homes. They're looking at loans. They're looking at ways to do this. And time is not on their side for whatever reason. They sign up with an agency and a surrogate's ready today, but they can't get their money, for 3 months or 6 months. Fertility clinics, nearly all of them, as well as us, work with companies like Medicard. It's a financing company that works with trusted providers around the health space. So many people will use that funding as a bridge, while they're waiting to get equity from their home, while they're cashing in cashing in an investment. But while that time is there, they want to get going now, or they found, their sister or friend has said, I'll be your surrogate, let's go. Or the clinic says, your number's up, let's get going on IVF, and there's some other costs associated with that. Definitely looking into that as a way to just bridge until you're able to collect funds. Also, if you are going to have a surrogate and you're going to be away from work for a great deal of time when your baby comes, and that's a year away, that's 16 months away, 18 months away, it's really important to have the conversation with HR. How do I bank my hours? How do I move my vacation time from this year to next? What am I eligible for in terms of time off after I have a baby? Oftentimes there are parental leaves offered through employers. The surrogate will take the maternity benefit, so the first 15 weeks of employment insurance in Canada, and you as the intended parent will have the rest, which has actually now been extended, so you as intended parents can take the full year. But for many intended parents, they are wanting to have their partner home for part of it, or they want to look at ways to maximize and have, a wage top up if that's possible through their employer. So when you're looking at this, it's difficult, because when I say to people all the time, like, go talk to HR, and they go, well, no, I don't want anyone to know I'm doing this. And what if it doesn't work? And, you will need time off. You will need time off if you're doing your own IVF. You will need time off if you are going to be traveling to your surrogate, or you are, you know, expecting more than one baby. If you're doing a tandem surrogacy and you're going to have a baby here and a baby there, we want to make sure that you have all that information up front from HR, so that you can really make the best decisions around how to travel, when to travel, how to get to your surrogate, all of that. So important. If you are an intended parent outside of Canada, while our social health care in Canada is fantastic and your surrogate's health care is covered, what is not covered is your baby's care. Your baby will not meet the residency requirement in Canada to access healthcare. And so what that means is you will need to purchase healthcare unless you have checked with your employee benefits and you have coverage for your child born abroad or born outside of your country. And so when you're looking at that, it's really important to check all of the fine print. And it's a hassle and worth it, because health insurance for your baby in Canada, it can be $20,000 US. And so what happens is there's only one policy right now that's covering, and it's Baby Shield. And you as the parent are insured and then can add your baby when they're born, should you need it. The number of clients who need it, who are outside of Canada, one would think, well, it's 100%. Like, why would a baby get covered? Well, many plans cover your child, and your child will be deemed your child depending on where your child is born, immediately at birth, within 7 days of birth, sometimes prior to birth. Your insurance company will just require a letter from the lawyer saying, yes, you are becoming a parent on such and such a day. And if you have questions about that, there's a fantastic service. It is the best $750 US that you could spend. And there's a company called ArtRisk. ArtRisk has a service in which they review health policies for intended parents, and they fine tooth comb, and they will tell you, apply for this here, apply for that there. This will cover your baby when they're born, and here's how to access it. They are fantastic and have found so much money for clients who were certain that they would not have coverage for their baby, and they actually did. So really, really a great option. And again, please email me if you'd like an introduction to Art Risk, or please reach out to Art Risk on your own. There are two pieces I think that are really important. One is time and one is money. So for many intended parents, they're thinking about surrogacy well before it's time to even look. And so I say to intended parents, if you have a lot of time, begin to look within your social network so that you aren't paying an agency. An agency is essentially a wedding planner for having a baby. And in that, it is not necessary, and it's wonderful. We take the heavy lifting. We find the surrogate. We, manage your expenses with the surrogate. We help you stick handle the clinic piece. All of that is done. And you can just focus on the relationship with your surrogate. For my type A type people on this call, it may make sense for you to do your own journey because you really want to be in control of the details. You really, love all of this stuff. You planned your wedding and all of your friends' weddings. You are the perfect fit to do this yourself and to save that money. And what I will say is that if you do work for an employer who offers alternative family building benefits, often an agency fee can be covered there. Often legal fees can be covered there. And, if you have IVF funding through where you live, like the province or country that you live in, use that there. Use that for that, and use your work benefits for agency fee, lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. And as you're looking for money, as a mom of 5 daughters and now a grandmother, it would be my absolute pleasure to help my kids have a family through surrogacy if any of them needed to. And I really want to encourage you to ask your parents, ask your grandparents if you're younger and they're alive, and to go to them and say, hey, we're thinking of this way of building our family. As you know, we're a gay couple, or as you know, we have been struggling with infertility, as you know, whatever the case is. And we're wondering if you would be able to support us financially with that. It's a very uncomfortable question for many that, over the 20 years I've talked to, and a very meaningful one, because, there's nothing more special than becoming a grandparent. And so many future grandparents would love to be a part of this journey and to support you financially. And as we're looking at, we've talked about employers, we've talked about the government, we've talked about our parents. Now it's important to focus on another place that we can look. If you are going through surrogacy because you are someone who has survived cancer, if you are going through surrogacy because you have epilepsy, diabetes, there is like a more medical clear path to why. Fertile Futures is an organization here in Canada, and I know they have counterparts around the world. They are an organization for cancer survivors that supports, covers costs for people who are planning to build their families through IVF, through surrogacy. I know that the Canadian Diabetes Association also has some grants available for those LGBTQ plus community. I know that there's also grants available through many community organizations that are helping people build their families. And so when I talk about that, it's really important to know, sorry, I Can't stop sneezing. Um, it's really important to know that there is help out there. There is help available. Um, and it's a simple entry into ChatGPT about, how can I find money for my fertility journey? I live in Italy, France, Spain, the UK, Belgium, Australia. And as you do that, you're going to get prompts around, um, you know, employee benefits, asking your family, grants available. There's going to be lots there to uncover around, um, available money. This process can be extremely expensive. We have had intended parents who are getting started. They need an egg donor. They have a fertility clinic, a surrogate, and they're spending, 150,000 Canadian dollars. And some are spending more if they have, terrible luck and things just do not go their way. And so I raise that because for me, I hear from clients all the time, well, another agency told me it would be this cost. And, you know, they are correct. And our goal all the time is to look at every detail, to share with intended parents that there's travel. You're going to be in Canada if you're not here, if you don't live here for months, probably 2 months, waiting for your baby and then waiting for the paperwork. It may be less, it may be a month. Um, your surrogate may be having a planned C-section and you arrive and have your baby and 2 weeks later you're home. But your baby may come early and may need medical help. And, we want to look at all of that. And so we want to look at like, how are you going to get here? Where are you going to stay? And so for many people who are looking at that, they look at travel sites like house swapping sites. And so they find people to come live in their place in France and, they swap for a place in Canada. Often there isn't a ton of flexibility around that, but if you have a surrogate who, has an estimated time of delivery, there's definitely ways to book through those types of programs. And it's really cool too, because someone's experiencing your part of the world and you're experiencing theirs. And so flight and accommodation and, those pieces that we as an agency believe are so important and we don't want them to be hidden costs. And so we talk about them early on. We talk about, what happens when you have an unsuccessful transfer and you know, move to a different surrogate because your surrogate has had a loss or costs associated with those pieces. It's just so important that as you're looking at the financial picture, you're really examining the what ifs. You're, buying insurance for bad luck, or you're buying insurance you know, for what could happen, not what we want to happen. And so looking at, all of the, the insurance for your baby, looking at through your employee health care. And, many intended parents have, had consultations with me and then immediately began to look for another job because they really see how they are wanting to approach this from a financial perspective and they've got lots of time. And so they begin looking for a job that has benefits. If you are a single person, a single woman, and, hoping to use your own eggs, get into the clinic immediately, freeze your eggs. If you're going to use donor sperm, freeze embryos. Money is one thing in cost, but time is completely different. And for some people, time has more value than money. And for others, money has more value than time. So when we look at how, funding your journey, it's not only from a financial perspective, but it's from a time perspective. We can all work longer and harder, and make more money, but we can't necessarily find time. We can't stop time, and so as we're looking at, you know, how to approach this, how to find money, um, really all of the items I listed today, are available. And we've had some intended parents um, you know, pay very little for their journey because they've, you know, found money here through their employer, and they've, one found it through their employer, one quit their job, found a new employer, and found money there. And so all of that to say, getting creative. Um, Places we don't want to sort of look for money or look for the shortcut or the cheap cut is our surrogate's expenses. We want to make sure our surrogate is more than comfortable the whole time. We want to make sure that we have enough in our account to cover any bed rest or any significant health issue that she may suffer and need time from work. We want to make sure that she has everything she needs, and that your legal agreement is really clear and safe, and that you have paid a surrogacy lawyer. Anyone can find a lawyer who's willing to write a contract, but finding a surrogacy lawyer who understands the laws where you live in the world as well as the laws in Canada, and a lawyer who can make you parents after through a legal court process. Again, really, really important to find a surrogacy lawyer. So, while we want to, find money to pay for things, including that lawyer, sometimes including the surrogate's expenses, if it's through a health spending account, that, you put the funds in, you pay CFC or the lawyer or the clinic or, the insurance or whatever you pay through that health spending account. It's really important. And if you do have um, health insurance, like if you live in the US, or, it isn't like sort of a social health care policy that, similar to Canada, and you have to buy insurance for yourselves, looking at, is there an option to add a child born through surrogacy or a child born abroad to that policy? Because for some people, again, that absolutely is possible. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm just reading this question. Oh, could you be, absolutely reach out to me. My email is above if you want to talk about, other ways to sort of fund your journey. I would be more than happy to discuss that with you. Um, I want to leave you all with this. Um, Money is an important part of this journey. There's no way around that. There's no way to, to get through this journey without spending. And I want to encourage you that, you know, we will help you if you work with us to find these funds through the programs I mentioned. Your HR is there for you as well. If you talk to your parents or other family members about, your desire to be parents, and can people, support you financially there. Um, I think you'll be surprised at how many people will show up for you as you begin this journey. And I sure hope that we hear from you and we're able to show up for you in this journey as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. And I look forward to following your journey should you decide to become parents through surrogacy. Thank you so much.